Did you ever walk when your feet were tired? Did you ever walk when the road was gone? Did you ever sing when your heart was aching? Did you ever sing just 'cause there's a song? I will walk, and I will sing, and I will bring a little courage for the morning, bring a little courage for the day. Did you ever laugh when all hope was lost? Did you ever laugh just to ease the pain? Did you ever weep till the tears were gone? Did you ever weep teardrops like rain? I will laugh, and I will weep, I will bring a little courage for the morning, bring a little courage for the day. Did you ever stand when the rest was silent? Did you ever stand a million strong? Did you ever dream in the darkest hour? Did you ever dream right to change the wrong? I will stand, and I will dream, and I will bring a little courage for the morning, bring a little courage for the day. I will walk, and I will sing, and I will laugh, and I will weep, and I will stand, and I will dream, and I will bring a little courage for the morning, bring a little courage for the day.
Greetings and welcome to this virtual Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Waynesboro for May 16th, 2021. I'm Tom Engel. I've been a member of the fellowship for a couple of years, and I have the pleasure of welcoming you to this service. Here's a reading to open the service. It's called We Pause This Hour by Bruce Southworth. We pause this hour to honor the Spirit and to accept ourselves as fragile humans, equally full of nobility and strength. We gather, weary of life's trials, yet cheered by infinite possibilities for love's grace. We meet with smiles and glad voices for old friends and new, every stranger a gift of potential friendship. We rejoice in the keen intellect and the warm heart. We remember those whose opportunities and needs our society thwarts, and we give thanks for the blessings that are ours. We praise all who extend a hand in service and whose vision of justice commands action. We pause, we gather, we meet, we rejoice, we give thanks, we praise, we proclaim our community. This message prompted me to reflect on some of the things I'm grateful for these days, and I'd like to share these with you. I'm grateful for the love of family and friends, the natural beauty around me, the season of spring with its explosion of life from dormancy, of growth and renewal, the feeling of accomplishment and wonder that comes when a seedling I've planted sprouts new leaves. I'm grateful for the opportunity to make connection with others from diverse backgrounds, to embrace both our human diversity and common humanity. Learning new things about the world, having been lucky in love, material security, for the scientists who developed the COVID vaccines, and for once again being able to enjoy simple bourgeois pleasures like a visit to Redbeard's, the loyal companionship of a good dog. I'm grateful for the chance to see our nation's and world's many problems as opportunities for us all to make the world a better place. The perspective, maybe even a little wisdom, that comes with growing older, the willingness on my good days to look at once settled views in new ways. For my beautiful 10-month-old grandson and my daughter and son-in-law who are being such outstanding parents to him. For the common thread that seems to run through several of these things, the joy and awe of seeing something come from nothing, like the spring leaves on trees, and the grandson who wasn't there a year ago. I know the things we hold dear can be ephemeral. Good health and security are fragile. Awesome things that came from nothing eventually pass. I could easily produce a list similar to this of annoyances and grievances. But today I'm grateful for the gift of life and the chance to count my blessings. Now, some more words from Bruce Southworth called A Communion of Heart and Soul as we light the chalice for today's service. For the gift of this day and for our community of spiritual nurture and compassion, we give thanks. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. May our many sparks meet and merge in communion of heart and soul.
Our words of prayer are written by Lynn Cox. Spirit of life, who holds us together in a web of holy relationships, make your presence known with us and in us and among us. Remind us that we are not alone in history. Ignite us with the courage of the living tradition. Remind us that we are not alone in entering the future. Anchor us with patience and perseverance. Remind us that we are not alone in our times of grief and pain. Comfort us. Manifest in us, in our human hands and voices, the spirit of love and togetherness. Remind us that we are not alone in joy and wonder. Inspire us to honor and extend the beauty we find in the world. Divine music of the universe, let our hearts beat in diverse and harmonious rhythms, cooperating with an everlasting dance of love. May we move with the rhythms of peace. May we move with the rhythms of compassion. May we move with the rhythms of justice. Source of stars and planets and water and land, open our hearts to all our neighbors. Open our souls to a renewal of faith. Open our hands to join together in the work ahead. Let us now join our hearts together in silence as we hold in our hearts the joys and sorrows, today unspoken, of this caring congregation.
In the light of love, we are home. In the light of love, we are home. In the light of love, we heal and sing. Thy will be done. In the light of love.
Beyond the Zero-Sum Game by Nathan C. Walker. For centuries, insiders have been democratizing their religions. Incremental moments of institutional reform have led to a new era of theological enlightenment. From out of ancient times into the twilight of now, these reformers have made a sacred vow to never mischaracterize freedom as a zero-sum game. True freedom is not jealous. True freedom is not envious. True freedom is not spiteful. True freedom does not desire to restrict the rights of others. True freedom knows not a selfish thought, knows not how to threaten. To sense true freedom is to know that your win is my glory, and that your suffering is inextricably tied to my own. For the sum of all that is holy shines far beyond the tools of our evolving democracy, from party jingles to picket signs, not as a political slogan, but as a way of life. A Covenant Invites Relationship by Lisa Ward. A covenant is not a definition of a relationship. It is the framework for our relating. A covenant leaves room for chance and change. It is humble toward evolution. It claims, I will abide with you in this common endeavor, be present as best as I can be in our becoming. This calls for a level of trust, courage, and sacrifice that needs to be nurtured, renewed, and affirmed on a regular basis. A creed creates a static truth, something that does not incorporate new insights and realities. A covenant is a dance of co-creation, keeping in step with one another in the flow of our lives. A creed seeks uniformity and a unison voice. A covenant seeks harmony and a shared voice. Sometimes we may arrive at a unison, but it is not required. A creed gives authority to the statement, A covenant gives authority to shared intention. A creed creates an us and them. A covenant invites relationship. A creed is a prescription that must be relied on. A covenant relies on the treasures of shared truth. The overall trust within this covenant is in the truth, capital T, something which no person can fully see, yet something which each and every person can come to know in glimpses, in another story, in epiphanies. Truth is ever changing in our seeking to understand because of our limited perspectives. We grow into a deeper sense of the meaning of all things when we take our journey seriously with full heart and mind. The courage within this covenant is in the acceptance and celebration of life with all its challenges, pain, ironies, and joys. And the sacrifice within this covenant is in the letting go of dogma, of assumptions, of control, and giving over to a greater wisdom which comes to us in bits and pieces. The task of this covenant is to take responsibility for the freedom we espouse. We know that we are interconnected and that what we do creates ripples of hope or despair, of affirmation or negation. What we do with and for one another is powerful and beyond our imagining.
Choice is good. We, a 21st century American community, take that to be a foundational truth, don't we? Our economy depends on marketing options to consumers who choose this rather than that to purchase, to subscribe to use, and then sometimes to discard. Ask anyone who has lived through any time of scarcity or in an economic system that considered choice an insupportable decadent luxury, or in a society that promoted conformity at the expense of personal liberty. We know how important choice is. When Walter and I lived in communist Romania, there was a joke about an old man who was out doing his daily errands and got so tired walking down the street, taking care of what he needed to do, that he stopped right there where he was, in front of a shop, leaned against the wall, and fell asleep. While he was resting, people saw him waiting and assumed he was in line to buy something in limited supply, so one by one they took their place in line behind him. When he woke up, he saw the people behind him and asked them what they were in line for. They responded that they were in line because he was in line. What was he in line for? He didn't know, but he was at the front of the line. He wasn't about to give up his place, and so they stood waiting to find out what they could get that day. Who knows what useful or tradable thing was available to people in this line? They didn't have choice of what was available, but if they got what was there at any given time, they might be able to make a deal, make a trade for something that was not as readily for sale. Here, we became a society that placed a premium on all manner of choices. We are a society of consumers. It became primary to our economic identity, so that our entire system seemed on the verge of breakdown when there was difficulty and fear after 9/11, and our president then encouraged us to fight terrorism by going out to eat, taking in a movie, or finding other ways to spend our way into post-traumatic stability. And as supplies were in short supply during this pandemic, first toilet paper and now gasoline, many among us have compensated by hoarding what is available. And we desperately long for the day when shortages are behind us. To be slightly flip about it, consumers are us. So it should come as no surprise that pursuing one's taste as a consumer also made its way into American religion. Poll after poll has found that more than a quarter of all adults have changed their religious identity, their religious affiliation, at least once. Sometimes the change would be within branches and denominations of a large religion like Christianity. Other times the change would be from one large religious identity to another, such as a Christian becoming a pagan or a Jew becoming a Buddhist. The overwhelming majority of Unitarian Universalists are part of this reality. We are a denomination whose numbers are dominated by what our spiritual ancestors used to call come-outers, because many of us have come out of other religious traditions to make our home in this tradition. And why do people make such changes? Why did we? I came out from the Christian tradition I was raised in because I could not reconcile the world that science uncovers and gives clarity with the literalistic demands of the tradition I was from. And then 20 years later, I came out from being completely without a religious identity or community, a none, N-O-N-E, to use the pollster's term, into Unitarian Universalism because I needed spiritual community that accepted me as I am. A gay man, decidedly liberal with a theology that is uncomfortable with using only a single label. Many of you also came from another tradition or from no specific religious tradition into Unitarian Universalism, while a much smaller number grew up within this tradition. Choice is, in fact, integral to our being here together. Looking at it one way, we acted like consumers, trying to find a religious home where our needs would be met, our tastes accommodated, our ways of being in the world validated, a people with similar values and experiences becoming a support team to each other. But sometimes our self-identification as consumers making a market choice competes against other aspects of who we are and need to be together. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense to be a consumer. When I last went to the DMV to get my driver's license, I was dismayed to be identified with a customer number. I wasn't there exercising a market choice. I was there fulfilling state law in order to exercise the culturally and professionally determined need to operate a motor vehicle. Getting a driver's license is not like determining what style of sofa to buy or which make of vehicle. When the issue isn't taste in optional goods and services, the mindset of a consumer gets in the way of our basic obligations regarding how to coexist. We are part of a social contract, a compact, a covenant. As Americans and as Unitarian Universalists, our understanding of covenant has great connection to those New England Puritans who were the literal ancestors of the early American Unitarians. John Winthrop, the Puritan governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, set parameters for being in covenanted community in his sermon aboard the Arabella en route to Massachusetts in 1630. These are words from that sermon. Now, the only way to avoid this shipwreck and to provide for our posterity is to follow the counsel of Micah, to do justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly with our God. For this end we must be knit together in this work as one man. We must entertain each other in brotherly affection. We must be willing to abridge ourselves of our superfluities for the supply of others' necessities. We must uphold a familiar commerce together in all meekness, gentleness, patience, and liberality. We must delight in each other, make others' conditions our own, rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together, always having before our eyes our commission and community in the work as members of the same body. So shall we keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. 19 years later, the Puritan congregations of New England, of Massachusetts specifically, came to a common agreement set out in the document called the Cambridge Platform. It's an outline and justification for their functioning cooperatively, but as independent congregations, each with its own governance. These Puritans saw their congregational covenants as calling them to walk together as God led them to do. The covenant for them was a promise to live together in mutual love, to bring the love of God into their communal relations and purposes. Even though our theologies are centered on different concerns than preoccupied those Puritan ancestors, the Cambridge Platform still informs our sense of how we can covenant to be together. We come together to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly in the face of what we do not understand, in the face of the ultimate, knit together as one organic whole, bringing divine love into our lives and our world together. That core holds firm despite all the differences in what we care about in terms of theology and philosophy. It is the basis of covenanting to be a sacred community, a beloved community to each other. In covenant, there is mutuality, where the ability, wealth, and power of some should be expected to improve the lot of others. The spiritual strengths of the one join with different strengths of others to strengthen the entire community. Many Unitarian Universalist congregations put great effort into producing a written document of covenant. Here in this fellowship, we have not focused on doing so, but we have signed on to the covenant with other congregations within our association. This is the part of the association's bylaws which contains our principles and our sources. Written words of covenant can be important reminders of what we have promised to each other, but they are not a substitute for living the covenant of love with each other. Our life together is resilient so long as we share together in love. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in truth. When we participate formally in a ritual of welcoming new members in our congregation, it takes the form of a spoken compact in which the new members state to the existing members their commitment to participate and support the congregation and remain true to the spirit of love. The regathered congregation then responds with promises of inclusion and support and a recognition of how sometimes they, the existing congregation, the members who are there, will be imperfect and need the same grace they now offer new members. It is a covenant of love and mutuality. As we prepare to resume in-person services next month, let us hold these promises dear. For it is through our covenant, not through our beliefs, that we become one. May we always continue to come together in such love as this. Amen, and blessed be.